Yo, okay. So today's gonna be a little bit of a weird one. I don't know how it's gonna go. I have not started it. This is all the materials I'm gonna be using today. Now you might be wondering why on earth there's an egg and what is it gonna do with DIY? So I have this friend, and we call her Titan, which means egg in Chinese, and I got this idea of casting this egg in some epoxy resin, and this is the silicone mold that I got. So we're gonna see how it goes. But first, we need to get the contents out of the egg. So all the videos that I saw, what they did is they poked a hole in the top and in the bottom, and then they just blew the contents out. But I think a hole on the top detracts from the aesthetic appeal. So I am going to use my own methods, which includes a drill. We'll see how it goes. I'm gonna try and get the eggs out right now.
Okay, so I've managed to clear the eggs contents and put the hole there. So let's go from here. Okay, so I was thinking about how I should make the lighting situation go, and I have these fairy lights. It's powered by coin cell batteries and a little switch. So I'm just gonna try and see how they look like in the dark. It's a little bit of a delicate situation to stuff the LEDs into the shell, but here we go. Okay, that looks really good. I did not expect an egg to look like that under some light. Okay, that looks amazing. Okay, we can now go to the epoxy situation. All right, so I'm gloved up. Now we're about to begin. So we have two solutions, an A and B. I'm going to mix them in a 1 to 3 ratio. So before we mix it up, I have this 3D printed case here for the silicone mold. I've got a hole in the middle there so that I can kind of like blow the mold out once it's cured. So there's like there's no vacuum. So let's put the mold into the case. So the advantage of having the mold is that I can move it around while it's curing. Yeah, because if I try to squeeze just the silicone, then it's gonna overflow and stuff. So that's why the case is good for portability. Yeah, and also another thing is that I put some tape around the side so that I can stick like tape to it, because if it was just a silicone mold, tape's not gonna stick to it. There's nothing to this silicone. And then okay, so let's position the egg now. Let's make sure it looks right. The thing is, I'm having a bit of a hard time trying to get it to balance. As you would know, eggs don't balance up right. But don't worry, I have an ingenious solution to that problem. I think that looks good enough. Let's proceed. So we have a scale here, a kitchen scale, and I'm trying to decide how much I should pour out, because this is like my first time doing epoxy pouring. I think I'm going to do probably 90. This thing is viscous. Okay, kind of overshot a bit. No worries. I can just use 31 grams. That should still give me a 3 to 1. Stupid scale. Okay, so I'm gonna do 32 grams here, I think, because of the negative one starting point. Almost there. Okay, that's good enough. Oh crap, it's 33 grams. Okay, let me get the scale out of the way. So we need to stir the solution for a total of 4 minutes. That's why I have that phone timer there. And the solution starts to cure as soon as you start mixing it. So you gotta get everything ready before you start mixing it. Okay, so I'm gonna start mixing right now. All right, let's start the timer. Okay, I'm just gonna fast forward through this because this is incredibly boring. All right, we're done mixing. So I'm just gonna carefully put the stick away without dripping. All right, so to keep the egg kind of centered, what I've done is I've put a screw through this masking tape. So I'm gonna use that, put that in the hole of the egg, so I can kind of like tape it in the middle. Hopefully it stays that way. The only problem right now is that I don't have much of a space to pour. I'm just trying to make sure the egg isn't touching any of the side walls, and it looks like it isn't. Yeah, I think it looks okay, so let's go. So yeah, the problem is right now is the area to pour is very small, and I'm afraid I'm gonna spill. Oh yeah, you know what? I think it's better to put some tissues down. Voice over me is telling you this from hindsight. Tissues will not suffice. You want to use like a parchment, aluminum foil, plastic bags, or something. Yeah, so I'm just gonna fill this up. Okay, so I'm just gonna speed up through this pouring process because it's really quite long and quite boring. And yeah, I did spill some, which is where I can say plastic would have been more handy than tissues. Another thing you should notice is that the eggshell was kind of floating because basically it's full of air and the epoxy is really, really dense. So pretty much everything is going to float in it. So you need to find a way to definitely weigh your things down. So this is why I'm using that second piece of tape to kind of make the egg stay down. But the adhesive on the tape is not strong enough, so it's not really staying down. Um, so I'm just going to go find some weights to kind of weigh it down. So essentially, I was on a mad scramble to find some weights, and then I found a magnet, which would allow me to stick some nuts. These nuts are rather heavy, but as you will see, that it was not nearly enough to keep the egg like kind of in submerged in the epoxy because it had a real strong tendency to float. So I'm just gonna speed through the process of me trying to find all the weights to kind of pile on top. I use a little bit more of the neodymium magnets to stick more of the steel weights. Here I have some, I don't know what they call this, eyelet brackets used for mounting like photo frames to the walls. So I use many of those to kind of like keep the the egg submerged. So now that the main project is done, it looks like I have a lot of epoxy left over, and I'm wondering what to do with it. So yeah, so I have this coaster here that I made some time ago, just 3D printed and crappily painted. So I was thinking maybe I can just flood this with some epoxy. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, so I'm just gonna start pouring here right now. And the thing is, I think it looks so much better once it's covered in epoxy. Although unfortunately, it is quite useless now as a coaster because it's not gonna hold any water. But yeah, that looks pretty good. Unfortunately, I still have quite a bit of leftover epoxy. Um, so I'm just gonna try and nudge as much of the epoxy into all the nooks and crannies of this coaster. And then this goes on for a while, so I'm just gonna cut back to when I'm done with this coaster. Alright, so I found something else to encase in epoxy because I still have quite a bit of leftover. And epoxy is expensive, I don't want to waste it. And I swear I'm not obsessed with Singapore, even though that's a Merlion. So I'm just gonna speed up the pouring process. So I just have to accept the fact that I'm gonna have leftover epoxy because there's pretty much nothing else in encase at this point. And so we'll just leave everything to cure. And in the meanwhile, we'll work on the other steps of this project.
Okay, so the epoxy is curing over there, but in the meanwhile, I gotta design a base for the epoxy, the final product. So I'm gonna hop into Fusion 360 and kind of start the process right now. So, uh, Alright, so that's gonna be the end of part 1. I'm editing it right now and it seems like it's gone on for quite long enough. So if you're still interested, maybe subscribe and you can follow along for part 2. They'll be coming really soon. I'm gonna be doing the assemblies and everything tomorrow. I've got the rest of the parts 3D printing as we speak right now. That's probably the background noise that you hear. So if you like the video, give me a like.